Welcome to episode 8 or 9. I think it's 8, but not sure. And our topic for today is, are your headlines killing your business? What we are looking at here, headlines is not just headlines in a newspaper, right? But headlines that you use in a post on social media, headlines that you use, for example, on a video. Like Alan's got these thousands of people are following on YouTube now, and I'm so proud of what you're doing, Alan. So you could talk about that, right? But the titles of your videos require really good headlines in order to get attention. The headlines we have in emails, there's a whole lot of ways that we can actually use headlines, all right? And there's an actual formula of how to get the headlines right, which we will give you later on, okay? But just for now, all I want you to share about is, how do you go about creating headlines for your particular business, right? And what works for you and what hasn't worked for you, all right? So let's start with, why don't we start with you, Alan? How
okay, Peter.
You go about? I mean, you've got these done. You've got YouTube hung, drawn, and quartered, right? You've got it sorted out.
What I do for YouTube videos, particularly, is I use vidIQ. So vidIQ gives you options for titles for videos and also for thumbnails as well. So and it also helps you to formulate the details, the description behind the videos. So I modify the descriptions, and what you can do inside vidIQ is you can select alternative titles. It'll propose, for example, 3 different titles, and if you don't like any of them, you can regenerate and get 3 more suggestions. And you can come up with what is the optimum title for your video, and you can also get a thumbnail from vidIQ that matches or it enhances your appeal to viewers. And I was really surprised when I looked at one of my videos, and I've actually got more than 200,000 views on it. So if you do get the title and the thumbnail right, and there is enough interest in the subject matter, then people will keep looking, depending on the searches they're making in Google or in YouTube. Then they'll be directed to your video by the YouTube algorithm. YouTube will show your video to viewers who are searching for that topic. So I'm typically getting about 1,000 views on a video, and I was really astounded that this one, which I did a couple of years ago, has got more than 200,000. But that's the secret for me, is using vidIQ.
For those who are here and are not familiar with YouTube, can you explain what the word thumbnails means, Alan, and why are they?
Okay, a thumbnail is basically a picture that you place on the front end of your video, and it's an attention grabber. So basically, you're going to YouTube and you're searching through videos, and for a particular topic, YouTube will present you a number of options, and you'll click on the one that appeals to you most. So the thumbnail is the thing that really is the bait to get you to click on your video.
Okay. Thank you, Alan. Who'd like to contribute?
Mark, you put out some great stuff.
Oh, well, thank you, John. Checks in the mail, but
yeah, for your articles and everything.
That was an invitation to talk, Mark.
Ah, okay. I thought maybe you're gonna let the ladies go first. My bad. Okay. Well, John and Peter and I are kind of on the same page. I mean, they're a little more advanced than me, but really, I like to think of it like psychology. If you know what the people you're trying to attract want, it's a lot easier to write headlines. Now, Alan, will you put whatever, is this a paid piece of software? This, because I'm not
Yeah.
familiar with it. Put it in the chat. And the only reason why I say that is because notice something now, ladies and gentlemen, do not get caught up on this software. That software has to, like he said, it'll give you 3 options. You have to test. You know something, Peter, I'm going to go off on a tangent, Peter, forgive me, but ladies and gentlemen, this stuff cannot replace our ability to think. Too many people, they want to write the content, to do this, to do. You and I have to know, what does your consumer want? And then you offer it to them in a way, in terms of an offer or a headline, and you see if it resonates. If it doesn't, that is your cue, signal. You got to adjust, you got to tweak. So, John, what is that term you use all the time when you say the cost of opportunity lost or something? I don't want to mischaracterize it, but
COI, what's the cost of inaction?
Cost of inaction. Well, I'm going to say it this way. If I write a headline, send it out to 100 people, let's just use old school snail mail for a moment. I get a 3% response. Peter looks at my whack headline. He says, Mark, we can tweak that. He tweaks it. He gets 39% response. 39 out of the same 100. That 36 people that I've lost, you didn't just lose them, ladies and gentlemen. You lost their testimonials. You lost their potential repeat sales. You lost all of this exponentiality because you don't know how to write an appealing headline. So this is very, 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 very powerful and critical that you study your marketplace. You don't offer chewing tobacco to a fish. You say, yeah, but this is grade A chewing tobacco from Tide. Who cares? If they're not into that, it's not going to resonate. So learn what they want. And it's a lot easier to get in front of them and give it to them. Like I said before, Peter, we want to be the aspirin to their headache. Stop trying to, Peter, you said something, and don't take this the wrong way. A couple of weeks back, you said, what should our topic be? Whatever the group has said is their issues. That's our topics. We don't need to dig around in a bag wondering what to come up with. They said, hey, I'm struggling with this. If we have expertise, or somebody has expertise in here, share it. The reason why Alan got 200,000 views on that video is because it resonated. Yeah. Alan, I have a video I wrote 12 years ago. Mm-hmm. I would have bet you money this video would not have done as well as it did because Mr. Genius here was convinced I knew what the market wanted. Listen at this headline for the name of the video. How to qualify for a bank loan. Now, how generic is that? To date, that thing has gotten over 73,000 views.
Amazing.
I would have never believed that.
Yeah.
Well, see, that shows you I wasn't as in touch as I thought I was. So I'm getting off my soapbox now, but the point I'm trying to make is you got to know what they want. And if you can get, and if you can't give it to them, find a JV partner, a Peter, a John, a Tina, a Kristine, a Dr. Annika, Alan, who can, and partner with them. But stop trying to rely on this technology to do all the heavy lifting. It is to supplement what you and I do, not replace it. So I'm done, Peter. I don't know if I answered your question, but that's what I would say to you. Learn how to write from their perspective, and you won't have as much trouble writing headlines. Because it's not that hard. It really isn't.
To go off what you said, Mark, I don't know about in other parts of the world, but there's a rag that's by all the cash registers here in the grocery stores and what have you, called Vanity. In the magazine Vanity, they spend 70% of their time on the headline. The next 20% is the first 300 to 500 words in the article. The last 10% is the article itself, because they realize, it's like Mark said, if your headline doesn't grab their attention, none of the rest matters. Now, once you grab their headline, your subheadline or first paragraph has to make them want to keep reading. And if they don't want to keep reading, again, whatever you got to offer is right out the window. You know, it's not going to matter. A lot of people, you know, they take the headline as, well, I'll just throw that in after I write this great grand and wonderful article. That's the wrong way to do it. You have to know what your offer is first, then put your headline on, because it's that headline that's going to grab their attention. Now, they say that you got 3 seconds to get somebody's attention if they want to read your article. And, you know, I imagine the YouTube videos are the same or maybe even shorter. So, ladies and gentlemen, those watching, pay attention to what that headline says, because without it, you got nothing. You can be the greatest, grandest, smartest, most wonderful person going. But if your headlines suck, like Mark said, you're going nowhere fast.
John, I'm a bit confused about what you said. Help me here. Did you say that you need to create the headline first before you create the content?
Sure, because what's your content? It's all about the headline. Whatever your headline is, that's what your article is all about. So, you know, this is going back to Dan Kennedy days, David Ogilvy, and a lot of the great copywriters before all the great internet and AI and all that came about. Their whole thing was they would spend a ton of time on the headlines before they ever put the article and everything else together. And again, they wanted something that grabbed the person's attention. You know, there's one of the things Russell Brunson is good for is his funnels. But when you stop and look at it today, people are moving away from that long drawn out sales cycle. Now they want, you know, the same thing you've heard Peter and Mark and I say, can you solve my problem? They're looking to see whether you can solve their problem or not. They don't want to jump through a gazillion hoops to start with. They want a simple answer. Can you solve my problem? If your article or your video or anything shows you can solve your problem, then they want to talk to you more. But until that time, you know, people are getting bored or, you know, tired of all the hoops and all the rest of it.
You know, I love you like a brother, John, but I disagree with you.
Everybody's entitled to their own opinion.
No, yeah, I know. And I'm not going to try and compete against Dan Kennedy. You know, I mean, but I couldn't do what you just said. To me, the headline is the most important. I mean, creating the content is easy, right? I don't need a headline to tell me how to create the content. The content is simply an idea I got in my head, so I just create the content. Then when I finish doing it, it's always normally a conversational sort of thing, then I look at it and I think, okay, now how do I sell that stuff to people to get them to read it? Then I think about what can I come up with a headline that's going to impact to make them read the content. I do it the other way around.
Oh, that's the beauty of.
And I will spend more time trying to find the right headline than it does for me to create the post in the first place.
Well, you can always come up with a headline to go with what you've written for the body of your text, Peter. You come up with the headline, and if that happens to be slightly different to what you've written, you can always tweak your article to fit the headline. But you know what you want to say about your product and your angle of approach, so you write that down. I don't have a problem with that. I think you can do it either way. You might have a great idea for a headline, and then you can fit your body text underneath it. But you might think, right, this is going to be a good concept because you've been nutting it around for a while. So you put the body of the text down and you think, now what would be a good headline? And something might really come to you, but you need to tweak your article. You know, you could do it either way. That's my opinion. Yeah,
it's fine. I mean, we're all entitled to our opinions.
And we're all different. So, you know, some people want that one liner and that just brings out the rest of that creative flow. But other people think, right, now I know what I want to say because I'm familiar with this, so it comes out easily. And then I have to work a little bit harder to get the headline. So people work differently, you know.
But you know what?
Small picture, big picture kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Point taken, but I wouldn't, when I came up with a headline, if the headline meant I had to edit what I just created, then it's the wrong headline. Because what I just created came
Not necessarily.
Right.
Not necessarily.
Therefore, I want to create a headline that drives people to what I'm trying to say, not to change what I'm trying to say.
Well, you know what? I went to a conference yesterday, and a business conference, and there was a speaker there. She was talking about press releases. Now, if you're going to send a press release to a media company, normally you would send it to a particular journalist who's in the area that you want to get into, or that you want to put your press release into, your area, you know, your topic area. And so she was saying, and she's worked in that industry for a very long time. And she went round the room and said, what are your concepts? And so people were telling her their concepts, and she'd go, and they'd say, oh, could it be this title? And she'd go, no, that's not good enough. And she'd stand there and she'd think about the basic content they were talking about, and she'd come up with this particular heading, and it was totally different to what you think. It was quite creative, and it was sort of eye-catching. Now, you've got to catch the attention of that journalist, and they see thousands of emails, and they're just going like watching, and then there's one, they'll go, wow, that's good. So you've only got moments, you know, 1 or 2 seconds to actually catch their. Sorry?
That's why copywriters are paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? Because
they know, yeah. So anyway, it is in the title that is where you grab people's attention for sure. They're not reading the small print; they're reading that big headline first.
Well, I don't know. I hear what John's saying, and I hear what you're saying too. We're all with different ways of looking at it.
Sure.
To me, once I come up with a title, if it's going to mean I have to change my content, then it's the wrong title. That's the first thing.
It doesn't necessarily mean you're changing the meaning. It might be just 1 or 2 words that are key to your title. You know what I mean? You're not changing the meaning and the nuts and bolts of what you're saying. All you're doing is changing a couple of things. You're tweaking it. So it's not necessarily a wrong title if you've got to tweak it. I don't think anyway.
Yeah, I hear where you're coming from. I agree with that. I mean, to me, it's got to be attention grabbing. It's got to be curiosity driven, and it's got to be sometimes, if you can, controversial.
Yes.
Those things alone can actually grab people's attention.
Yes.
And the objective to me of a headline is to simply make them read the next 2 lines, not the whole article, to get them started. Then the next 2 lines, you've got to get their attention, especially if you're looking at a LinkedIn post. Remember, when you do a LinkedIn post, normally speaking, the only lines that people see are the first 2 lines, unless they click them all. So in those first 2 lines on LinkedIn, you better make absolutely sure that you've got enough in there to encourage people to think, I'll click more. What else is she saying? Click more.
Yeah, so something could be controversial, or it could be emotional in some way, like heart tugging, or you know, something really impactful. So it can be all sorts of things. It could rhyme, and it could be. Sorry,
I'm not a great copywriter, but I love it, and I wish I was a better copywriter, right? But to me, I would spend, if there was, out of 100, because you were talking about this before, Mark, out of 100, I would spend 85% of that getting the right headline in the first 2 sentences. Once I've done, the rest of it's easy. Creating the content is easy. I mean, the idea's in your head, so I just think, just have a conversation. I'm talking to, when I do a post on LinkedIn, for example, I'm talking to you, Kristine. I'm writing this to you, right? I've got you in my mind and I'm writing the post to you, even though it goes to everybody, right? Then I think, okay, how do I get people to read that? How do I stir them up? What can I do what can I do? Not bait and switch them, but how do I get their attention to get them to read at least the first 2 lines and then to think, oh, I better go a bit more. Anyway.
Peter, let me weigh in on this really quick. You see John's, the website behind him, Meet John D. Allen. Now look at the print right underneath that. Book a free 1-hour strategy session with me. Cut that print in half, shrink it, right? Make it half. So it's like you got to really squint to read it. But that headline says, every word on this page is about the great Tina Huggins. Guarantee you should go get a magnifying glass and try to read it. So when you write a headline that resonates with your target audience, they'll pay attention. If you're saying, I don't know what to write about, I don't know what, then you really don't know what your target market wants. How can you not write something that appeals to them and say, I have what you want? Are you sure you do? Peter, you say you're not a great headline writer. I read your comments. You are fabulous at emotion, just what Kristine was talking about. You know how to make, when you comment, you almost make people have to respond because you cut to the chase. It's very positive. That's what this, I call it psychology. I don't know what Dr. Annika would call it, but I call it psychology. When you know the psychology of what you're doing is not, like for instance, there's a comedy out where this guy, he's a professor, he's up speaking to a group of people and the men are asleep. One guy's up on the table with his legs behind, flipped over. It's just, completely ridiculous. And then finally he looks up and sees nobody's paying attention. So you know what he says? He says, and her succulent nipples begin, and suddenly the men begin to wake up, because suddenly now you're talking their language. If you don't know what your audience wants, no, you probably can't. AI ain't going to be able to help you as much either. But when you know what they want, it's not that hard to put a carrot in front of them that they want. And like Peter said, then you just sort of lead them along. So I'm up. In fact, I'll go and Steve, Peter, I did this on a podcast recently. We were talking and I said, anybody in the audience who's listening to me that says, I don't believe that will work, I have a challenge for you. You put up the cost, let me keep 100% of the profits. Nobody's taken me up on it yet, but they're convinced it won't work. Well, put your money where your mouth is. Prove it. If you really believe that, prove it. They don't want to go that far. So headline writing, it is an art and a skill, but like if you understand what Peter knows, the art of persuasion, you don't have to be Dan Kennedy. I mean, it helps if you are, but the art of persuasion is what it's about. You got to know what these people want, put it in front of them in a sexy way, no offense, ladies, and you'll get the responses you want.
Well,
yeah, that woman yesterday that I was saying, I was talking about the press releases and the headings of them. So you've got to have a heading and then you've got to have your like a subheading, and they both have to be really good. And oh, now I forgot what I was going to say. Oh yeah, Peter.
Was that
Sorry?
Aldwin? Was that Aldwin?
No. It was some other woman. Name was Kate. I can't remember her last name. She came to speak at a BX networking event. It was a conference in Sydney.
Okay.
And she was very good. She knew what she was talking about, and she's had a lot of years of experience in that industry. And what she said made a lot of sense. But what I was going to say, remember a week or two ago, I spoke about aches and pains and walking canes, and you said to me, oh, now that conjures up a picture. So it's very, well, it rhymes, but it does conjure up a picture, doesn't it? Aches and pains and walking canes. So it can be something that's descriptive. It could be something that is contradictory, like they conflict, like you could have state something in the heading, in the title, and then have something that's conflicting, and people go, what the hell? What does that mean? And so they can, then they stop and read it, and then it makes sense to them, especially if they read the second line. So it could be a lot of different tricks that you could use to just catch their attention. One of the guys in this group he'd actually died 3 times a couple of years ago, and he pulled through. And he didn't know why he was alive still. He said to God to take him away, take me, I'm done here. And God gave him a message and said, "No, you're going back. Pull yourself together and get yourself well again and get on with it. And get on with the purpose of your life." That was the message. And this guy was like blown away by that. But he didn't know what his purpose was until just in the last week or so. And he was saying, "This is what I'm doing, and now I know what my purpose is." And she came up with a title for this thing that he's doing, this project that he's working on at the moment. And it was something like, this guy helps charities, does charitable works, and in his second coming. So it was to do with, he lives again. And that was her title. So it's like she was really very clever, and it can be something really quite simple. It can be really simple concept.
First of all, we should agree to disagree here. Whether you do the title first or after, it doesn't really.
That's personal preference.
But the key issue is, if the title is not right, then people are not going to read your content. That's the key issue we're trying to get at.
Yeah, for sure.
The order you do it in is a matter of opinion. So John and you and I differ on this, but doesn't matter. Okay. Okay, thank you. What about you, Tina?
So perfect timing, because I was going to chime in. So I've done it both ways, with the title first and with the title after. And it just depends on what I'm writing. If I have a title already in my head and I know I want to get there, the title will come first. I might have to tweak it, but you're right. The title needs to grab them. And so I've had a recent discussion with the gentleman that has been my co-host, because he's a relationship co-host and I'm a divorce. And so what he needs is not what I need. And so there's been conflict in the wording of what needs to go in the title. And then I have guest speakers and we pick the title. So I usually pick the title, and I pick those titles somewhat based on the person that's my guest speaker, but I also base those titles on specifically what the SEO is grabbing onto in the public right now. And so the word narcissist has been there for a while because it's a coin word, everybody's using it to explain everything out there. So it's not that we're always speaking about narcissism or that it's actually a narcissist we're talking about, but the word narcissist draws people in. And my whole key part to bring my guests into my show is to get that one sentence that's going to draw people in. And again, that's where John was talking about, you walk past the aisle to check out and Vanity Fair is right there. And it's the title on Vanity Fair. It's also the picture on Vanity Fair. If the colors are there, that's going to draw your eyes. You're going to read the caption and then you're going to pick it up and look for that article. And that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to get our viewers' attention to our article or to our vlog, whatever we're doing. And so one of the things that when the state of Colorado certified me to teach EMT class, I had to go through a little class to do that. And one of the things that they talked about is color. They talked about color and movement of your hands. So if you're on the stage, you have big hand motions and you bring people's attention from out here into here, That's kind of hard in video. So I've learned, and I don't have them on today, but I'll wear sparkly rings. And so the title is important, but then for me, it's also the movement and the color that brings people in. So my 2 cents.
Good.
Very well said. Peter, one other thing before anybody else jumps in. Dr. Annika, do you ever do video like Facebook Lives or anything?
I have done very few.
No, I'll tell you the reason why I asked. Just to piggyback off what John and Tina said. Years ago, Reader's Digest, they would have an article in the back of an edition and say, which of these 5 headlines, or excuse me, it'd be 10, which of these 5 headlines do you think will appear on the front cover? Win a prize. You know what they were doing? They were getting their audience to tell them what they should put on the cover. You understand? I mean, so, and I said that to say this to Dr. Annika. So you're doing a live and you say, write in the chat your #1 issue. Everybody's going to be different, but that's telling you the content going forward to put out there. So, I mean, I'm not against AI. I don't want to sound anti-AI, but my point is, stop trying to get technology to do your thinking. Let technology do what it does. But you and I have to be I could have thought about this thing we're doing. Peter knows how to do it. So it's best he does it. Because if it was left up to me, we wouldn't be doing this. I would have told John this concept. John would have said, Mark, that's fabulous. And it'd be 6 months from now, and we still wouldn't have done the first episode if I was left in charge of it. So do your own thinking and then let technology do the rest. But don't reverse it and think like you don't put a car in, what do you call it? Autopilot, and then jump in the back seat and think the car is going to steer itself. That's not going to happen. So just be aware of what your audience wants. And yet, ladies and gentlemen, if anybody ever tells you you do not have to test, you get off of that Zoom and go about your business. If you are not testing, you're wasting money, time, and effort. You got to test. Unless you're psychic. Are there any psychics? Kristine, are you psychic? Unless you're psychic, you do not know what your audience wants. You got to say, do you want this? Do you want that? Now, Peter will tell you that's called A/B split testing. I'll say it's called giving them an alternative. But either way, test. Don't box it. One other thing, Peter, and then I'll get off my soapbox. You see these companies running these billboards. If you haven't tested, you got no business running a billboard. Once you put that thing up there, it's done. And all that money's gone. Test strategically, inexpensively first, then go large. That's my advice.
The other thing is I write songs, and so my songs, I can write the song or I can write the title and then write the song. You know, it's the same sort of thing. But the title needs to be catchy, or no one wants to listen to your song necessarily. You know, if it's a boring title, they're not going to listen to my song. So something has to stand out to people. It has to be, I think the thing is, it has to be meaningful to people. And if you know your subject matter and you know what your customer wants, I guess you would know what's meaningful to them. So then you structure your catch line, your heading, to mean something to those people. Would you agree with that, Mark Newsome? It's got to be meaningful.
Yeah. Spot on, Kristine.
I'm just looking at my my autoresponder. It's called Get Response, okay? It does my emails. And I looked at which subject lines gave me the biggest opening, because these people will give you what are the best open rates and click-through rates and things like this, right? And there were 3 one-word subject lines that probably did the best for me of all. One was oops, right? OOPS ... The second one was unbelievable ... And the third one was OMG ... Those three. I mean, my email list is not huge. It's about not even 3,000 now, right? But those three averaged an open rate of 72%, which is very high.
Well, people love controversy and people like shock and people like all that kind of stuff. So I think some of those words indicate that.
Yeah, and here's the other one. All these, just I'm doing this for the recording anyway to help, okay? But these are other subject lines that got more than a 50% open rate. The first one was the brutal truth about, and you put in whatever the pain point is. The brutal truth about getting more sales. The other one, I've got 4 of them I'll get in, I'll stop then. The next one was, where is it? Come on, get response. Where are you? Oh, yeah, here we are. Quick question for you, Kristine. Right? And then within an autoresponder, you can put their name in there to personalize it. The third one was, I've been thinking about you, Kristine. And the last one, which got just nearly 60%, was honest answer. Do you really hate this? They are the subject lines that work extremely well for me in email marketing. Now I'll shut up now.
Hey, Peter,
the other thing is using the
quick question. I'm sorry, Kristine, let me jump in here. How long have you had your email list, Peter?
Oh my goodness gracious, what is it, 2025? Nearly 20 years.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, learn a lesson here. This man has a 20-year track record with some of his subscribers. I won't say he could write anything, but something he writes resonates with them. I jump and I use OMG ... and I get a 2% open rate. And I say, oh, that stuff doesn't work. You got a whole different dynamic going on here, Mark. You just got online. You haven't built a reputation like Peter Beckenham has. So don't think these gurus can tell you, oh, you know, this headline did this. Listen, your audience is unique. They're unique. They got on your list because of you, not because of Dan Kennedy. You have to test to find out what resonates with your audience. Now, I'm not saying what Peter said can't work. What I'm saying is if you verbatim do something that somebody else did and it doesn't work, you don't know the dynamics behind that. You don't know how many emails he sent before that.
Yeah, we'll do a session on email marketing. We'll do a session on that, okay, later on. I agree with you, Mark.
The other thing,
right? You know, in other words, what I'm saying is too many people, they want this templated success thing.
Yeah, good point.
Put it in the microwave, and it does not work that way, ladies and gentlemen. It's personal. Your audience has to feel what you're talking about. If they don't, and it's wooden, and you're just copying somebody else, it's not going to work. You're going to be disappointed. I want you to understand that up front. You got to be you, and they have to resonate with you first before you can try John's approach, Tina's approach, Kristine's approach, Dr. Annika's approach, Alan's approach. They got to resonate with you. If they're not resonating with you, you're going to have a hard time.
Good point.
You're going to have a hard time. You know, one other thing, Peter touched on this a long time ago. If you're letting AI write your content, you're missing out. To me, that's like me and Tina setting up to go on a date, and at the last minute, some lady shows up and says Tina couldn't make it. How well do you think that's going to go? Come on. So, you know, Alan, I see you want to jump in, but I just had to share that.
Yeah, I think the conversation is really interesting, and hearing everyone's different point of view. And I just wanted to mention my most recent video on one channel, which was actually a video I took of somebody making a presentation at a meeting that I was at. So it was a small audience of about 24 people who were interested in property. This guy who I know, Tom Jeffs, he made a presentation about building contractors, because he's a building contractor. And he was basically asking for a sympathetic hearing for building contractors. not the most obvious, thing to put to an audience. But when I actually put this on vidIQ, it actually suggested several titles. My suggestion would have been Tom Jeffs, that's the name of the guy, explains the humanity of builders, or something like that. What vidIQ came up for me was the tragic lives of billionaire builders. And this is sort of intriguing for people, and it's actually got 1,386 views since the 20th of March. So I agree with you. You've got to know what your audience is looking for. I did select that title, but I don't take ownership of the fact I could be imaginative enough to actually create that title. I probably would have created something a lot more boring and probably wouldn't have got as many views. But vidIQ came up with this tragic lives of billionaire builders, which is a bit intriguing. People think, well, what's going on here? And then it's come up with vidIQ came up with this thumbnail as well, which is also a little bit unusual. So it catches people's eye. And just in like 5 days, that's 1,386 views. It probably do a lot more, but it's a combination of factors, what you put out there, but certainly you've got to have something which is eye-catching. Otherwise your audience is going to go somewhere to someone who's got a more interesting headline and they've got a more interesting thumbnail. That's all I just wanted to add. Thanks, guys.
Well said, Alan. Well said. But the other thing is, and you made the point, Mark, I mean, people have got to resonate with you. And the headline's got to be attractive, but people have got to resonate with you. And the reason why my email list, for example, is less than 3,000, because 6 years ago it was close to 15,000. I got rid of them. Because they weren't. I mean, why should I? Because you've got to pay for them, right? In terms of an autoresponder system, why bother with people? Because I made some really stupid mistakes with email marketing. That's another story. Bottom line, I had so many people who weren't opening, so why in the hell should I be talking to them anyway? So I got rid of them. And now I'm pretty happy with the ones that I've got. So they've got to resonate, not just get attention, but resonate. So, yeah.
Well, okay, I can't let this go. You just hit on something. Ladies and gentlemen, you don't need 200,000 people following you on LinkedIn. You need the 2,000 that are really interested in what you have. And that's just what he's saying. You don't need 150,000 people on your email list. You need the amount of people that are probably going to buy or do something positive. John, I don't know if you know, but Peter, you remember Terry Dean, big time
Yes.
internet marketer?
Yes.
Terry Dean, I used to follow his stuff. I love Terry Dean. He's one of the first gurus that I really could get. He said, I had 100,000 people on my email list, but 1%, 1,000 people paid $19.99 for his newsletter. 1%. Now, that doesn't mean the other 99,000 weren't valuable, but it just shows you these people, these humongous lists, when you boil it down, it's going to be a small percent that really buy and do the things you want them to do. So don't get hung up on these huge numbers. Try to do what Peter did, cull it down till you get down to you remember that movie, Peter, A Few Good Men, till you get down to those people that resonate with you and I. That's what it's really all about. Oh, by the way, you guys, in baseball, when you get 3,000 hits for your career, a Hall of Fame, I just hit the 3,000 threshold on LinkedIn. Now, I know that's vanity, but I'm just saying, I just hit 3,000 followers. So I thought that was kind of cool.
By the way, A Few Good Men. One last thing. Sorry, Kristine, I know you got your hand up. One of the best posts I ever have done was on Facebook a few years ago, and that was the heading: "You can't handle the truth." Right? That was the heading of the post. Came straight out of that movie with
That was a classic line by Jack. That was a classic line.
Yeah, you can't handle it. Sorry, yeah. Kristine.
Yeah, it was to do with what you said a while back, and you were saying my name, and you were saying that you were constructing a post or a title and you were using my name. And I was going to say that if you're speaking to someone or you're sending something to someone, if you use their name, obviously that is impactful because people like it when you use their name. It attracts them. Oh, they're talking to me. And also if you're telling a story or you've got a title and it's a human story, you might use a name that is popular. And if you use a name that's popular, most people know someone by the name of John or David or, that kind of stuff. So if you were to tell a story and put that in your title or your subtitle, that in itself can be a draw card, I think, because names, people know people with names, you know what I mean? It humanizes it, kind of thing, personalizes it almost.
Which is the same principle, and I know people here know that I do this. When I read Tina's post or Annika's post, and there's a line in there that grabs my attention, I will copy that and stick it in the comment. And I'll say something like this.
I do think so. Yes, I do that.
Hey, Tina, you really nailed it with boom, 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 boom. And I'll give her back the words that she put in her post, right? And then I tell her why I feel that way about it, which is another way of it. It's a way of what you were saying, Kristine, personalizing it back to people, right?
You're personalizing it, but you're also agreeing with her. You're agreeing and resonating. Yeah, so you're aligning yourself with that person. Yeah. But the other thing I wanted to mention is that when I get messages and emails and things on LinkedIn, there are people that I respect, and I will usually have a look at what they've posted. So that's the trust factor again. And the people that I don't respect quite so much, or that I think, oh no, I don't like them as much, I don't like their posts as much, I won't read them unless it's a topic that really, really interests me. So it's the trust factor again. And how you word your headings and your posts and your emails, I guess. If they're personal, if they resonate, if people trust you, that's all going to help to get those things read, and get more followers, or get people that are, want to buy from you or want to get to know you better at least. So I guess being personal, more personal to people, human, approachable, compassionate kind of thing, that people feel like they can, approach you. Some people might seem too standoffish. So I guess you got to word it so that you come across the right way to people.
Yep. Another powerful thing for a headline is to use alliteration. Okay, very powerful. Repeating the same letter 3 or 4 times in 3 to 4 different words is a very powerful thing. But Annika, you haven't said very much, and I want to hear from you because you are very quiet there and not saying too much.
Yes, because I don't have that much to say, maybe, in this. About headlines. English is not my first language to start with, but also I have been doing blog posts for a long time. And now I have this virtual assistant, and she is she has learned about search engine optimizations. So we looked at what nobody was looking at these blog posts, and then so we could see on the numbers that no one was doing it, and now she has started, or she's a bit into it to SEO optimize them, and now they are green instead of red when you look at the numbers. So I have her as my person to write my headlines today, and she also does it in the postings on LinkedIn and so.
So you don't have anything to do with the actual headlines at all?
Well, we talk about what we're gonna do, and I have given her the things that I've got from you, for example, and we talk about it. So we discuss what's going on and so on. So and she's learned also from the SEO course that she's been doing to get the right one.
Do you make sure she sends you a list of this week's headlines? I'll say you're going to do 5 posts. Do you make sure she sends you the headlines before they in fact go out? So you can approve?
Nope.
Do that.
Nope.
Please get them approved. Approve them, because otherwise you're going to cut the bad ones go out. You need to approve them. It's very simple. She makes the headlines for the week. You're going to do 5
I know.
posts.
Yeah.
Sends it over to you. Like I do this, and they go, "Oh, Jeff, that's terrible. I'm a lawyer. I'm not allowed to say that in my country." I didn't know that because I'm not a lawyer, right? But I can then change it to suit the client. Yeah, so that will help you a lot.
Okay.
Peter, I got to throw this in. I'm sorry, Doctor. I got to throw this in. Ladies and gentlemen, you see in the chat, who put that? Peter, did you put that in at subjectline.com?
Yeah.
Okay. Quick story.
Yeah.
The guy that owns that now, he bought it from another guy that used to own something called Main Street Podcast or something like that. I was on that guy's podcast. Anyway, I wrote a headline and put it in that software, and I got 100%.
Yeah.
And I screen shared it. So I said, nobody's going to believe this. So I screen shared it, and I got 100%. Now, I've tried that same headline in different softwares. It's got 85, 86, 47, so who knows? But the point is that I'm getting at, when you know how to write from your client's perspective, sort of what Jeff is talking about, not even from a legal standpoint, you can do much better. You just
By the way, that's an important point, because subject lines are critical for podcasts as well. And if you're using subjectline.com, the link's in the chat, right? Make sure you do more than one, because then you've got to complete your name with your name and your email address, and he will email you. And the reason I'm asking you to do that is because he runs an incredible podcast, right? And a way to get to him is to support him in this venture, right? And he is a really clever character and a bloody good guy, okay? So I'm suggesting when you use subject.com, but also make sure you ask for more than one, which he asks, so then he adds you to his email list. And once you do that, you've got an email from him, so then you can communicate with him about podcasting. And his big issue is podcasts, not email marketing.
What's his name, please, Peter?
Winning on Main Street. That was the name of the podcast. I'm sorry.
You don't need his name, Jeffrey. Just go to subjectline.com. That's all you need.
I've done that. I've written it down. Thank you.
That's all you need.
Jay Swindleson, I think is the guy's name that owns it now.
Yeah.
One of the things we were talking about titles, there's a book out called Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus.
Yeah.
When that book first came out, it had a different title. It sold 100,000 books, and Gray thought it did really good. Well, anyways, they changed the title. Now it's sold over 2 million books.
Hello.
Nothing else in the whole book changed. All they did was change the title.
Hello.
100,000.
Test and measure. Test and measure.
Yeah. Yeah, it went from 100,000 to over 2 million, and they're still climbing from his sales.
What is that famous story about a classic book? I forgot what it was called. They changed the headline to Think and Grow Rich, and the rest is history, ladies and gentlemen. That was not the original name, Napoleon Hill's classic book, Think and Grow Rich.
Yep. Great book. Great title. Kristine, I've got a question for you. Your stuff you're doing of late has been awesome. I've been following you. You know, I'm a lurker right in the background.
Okay.
Are you using a VA? Or you're doing a lot of it yourself?
I use ChatGPT, but I've trained it, and if I don't like what it's written, I'll tell it, no, I want it like this, I want it like that.
Yep.
And quite often I'll say, no, I want to change the line, and this is how we'll use it. And I'll give him specifically what I want. So
that's awesome. You're doing a great job.
Thank you. Yeah, I've and I'm changing now. I've got a different angle of approach now.
And you notice you're getting traction now, right?
I am actually. I'm getting more people coming to me. Yeah,
because you're putting out good stuff. You know, action gets traction. You know,
thanks.
You've turned from a caterpillar into a butterfly.
Yeah, I understand what I'm doing a whole lot better now. Like, you know, my focus on different areers.
Yes. No, you're doing fantastic. I thought you must have hired me because you were doing so good. You're doing great. I'm
just really getting more plugged into who I am, what I'm offering,
what I can do for people. But, I just had a very interesting podcast guest, and it came on at that very same time that you guys were starting. So I'm sorry to be late, but I made the effort to turn up.
The owner of subjectline.com is in the chat, Jay Svedelson.
That's him.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, but you don't need to.
He bought it from Gordon Henry.
Yeah. So, any final thoughts before we go?
Yeah, Peter, reach out to me and we'll work on a way to get some more people here, because there's some wonderful talent here. And if you want some new blood, I don't want to invite them without your say-so, so to speak. But I've got some ways and techniques I can double or triple this if you wish to. Right?
Let's talk offline, Jeff.
Yeah.
All you need to do is give them a link. But I can
give 6,000 people a link, but some of them you don't want.
Yeah, but what I'm getting at is I don't want you to put people in there without them knowing about it either.
No, that's what I want to talk to you about. The best way it's your show, so I wanted to do it.
No, it's not mine. No, it's not mine.
Whose is it?
It's called ours.
I want to do the right thing by the group, whatever, you know. Because I'm a marketer. That's what I do for a living, guys. I can blow this up if you want it blown up. I can leave it where it is, you know, either or.
No, I would love to have more people in here. I really would.
Yeah.
Look, I'm going to put this in the chat for you, Jeffrey. All you need to do is give them this, right?
Yep. I will save the chat. Speaking of chats, Mark, when you got time, send me a link. Let's have a chat. I'd like to have
Absolutely.
I want to get inside your head and steal all your ideas.
Vice versa.
Okay. Any final thoughts before we go?
Yeah, guys, start a podcast. That's my final thoughts to everybody. Start a podcast.
You know what? Yeah, what I think about AI, and it doesn't have to be just ChatGPT. There's a whole bunch of them. You can go just ask it, like brainstorm with it.
Absolutely.
Ask it for 10 or 20 titles for your post or your email.
Yeah,
and then you can have a look at it, and you might like number 1, you might like number 10, and you can just take the beginning and the end of it and put them together and make your own. So you know what I mean? But you brainstorm, you get it to brainstorm, and you just tell it, you give it some prompts about what you want, the kind of thing that you want, and the topic, and the sort of the subject matter, and you want it on this angle of approach, and it'll come up with all these ideas. And then you, like Mark said earlier, we can't just rely on AI, because it's not always going to give the best result and present us in the best way. So we have to make sure we're authentic, and it's got to feel like us, because if people see a post and we present quite differently, it's going to be confusing to the person that you're speaking to. So it has to align. Whatever you post really needs to be yours, not someone else's or ChatGPT's or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
You're on the right track, Kristine, very much so.
Okay. Anything else before we go? Then I'll love you and leave you. Okay. Cheers for now.
Ciao. See you, Peter. Bye. Bye.
Okay.